Press. Hello everyone, Anthony Monteith. This is Cup of Chi. Next episode with a very familiar face who's, I don't know, we've done more podcasts with him than anyone else, is Jonathan Shubs of the Unified Acupuncture Theory. And today we're going to be talking about the Bagua, ICHING, its applications in the realms of Chinese medicine, particularly acupuncture for the treatment of internal disease. So,
yes.
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
Oh, thank you, Siri. Yeah, my new computer. Sorry, Jonathan. I didn't catch it. She didn't catch it. Can you explain why the Bagua, why the ICHING? What's it all about?
Mm-hmm. Well, if we look, when I talk about Chinese medicine, I always go back to the roots. And the one basic thing that we can always talk about in Chinese medicine is yin and yang. And when we look at yin and yang, the most ancient document and philosophy we have based on the interactions of yin and yang is the ICHING itself. So by going back to the ICHING Bagua, it's almost like going back to the roots of the interactions of yin and yang within the Chinese body. So for those of the people who don't know, the ICHING was a book that was assembled around 950 BCE. According to Chinese mythology, it originally dates back to Fuxi, which was 2,500 or years ago, or around there. According to modern ways of dating documentation, probably it's much earlier than that. It's about 950. We can give it to this King Wen period. So the ideas that are present in the ICHING and the interactions of yin and yang, they predate most of the other information we use in Chinese medicine. It predates the 5-element theories. It predates the 6 conformations. It predates all of the other uses that we do in Chinese medicine. So by understanding the ICHING's basic structure of how yin and yang interact, we get back to some of the basic understandings of Chinese medicine itself. So that's one part of it. The other thing is that we start to understand the other concepts of Chinese medicine through it. The 5 elements came out of the ICHING, and we can understand some of where the problems are when we study some of the different configurations. And we can also use it to understand channels and actually come up with different treatments specifically based on the ICHING. So within my system, there's the 3 models. We have the foundations course, which is talking about how channels interact with each other, like the dance of the channels and how they dance with each other. We have the 5 elements course, which is understanding the movements of qi and energy within the body, mainly for psycho-emotional problems or chronic problems or functional problems. And then we come to the ICHING course, which is very much based about how to create the structures that the body needs to facilitate all of the other things. Although it's the last course, it's understanding the structures of the body. And by structures, it's talking about how the channels structure their interactions with each other. Yeah, I don't know if that was clear enough.
Okay.
Or concise.
Yeah. It's actually, it feels like a different way in to what I learned with Tan.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was just like, here's the guas, learn the guas, this is what the guas do. And it was like, what? Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
I've missed a step, and I remember particularly, I think you were there, we were in the embassy, the Malaysian embassy in London.
Yes, I remember that.
Remember that one? I actually found, interestingly, that, it had a list of people who were in the First World War, and I found the Monteith. I found the Monteith name. So I thought, okay, I'm supposed to be definitely in this seminar. And I think he was sat in front of me, and and there was a lady next to me from Bristol, and she was looking at me like, this is too fast. This is too fast. Like, how is anyone gonna, and it was very obvious to me that half of the people in that room had studied this before, and they were just saying the same answers. It was almost like learning your times table. 2 times 2 is 4. And I was thinking, okay, I do not know why it works this way. And I don't know, no disrespect to him, but it was very obvious that he was near end of life, and he was pushing very hard to get the information out, but without any understanding of how.
And you also have, Dr. Tan, who is very open about this, that his job, his vision was to get mediocre acupuncturists good. He wanted to get people who were at the brink of losing their careers, getting them to have successful clinics. That was his vision. So all of his teaching was about, I'm not going to go into the bare bones of it and understand it. I'm going to get you to be functional in the clinic. The problem with that is that there's limitations, and not everybody can work like that. So he was going to this big audience. So that was his thinking about it. My thinking is we go to understand why something works, because when you understand it, you incarnate the information, and then when you come to a treatment, you understand it. You're actually living the treatment with the patient. And so that's how I've always been trying. Everything I've done is I take what we know, what we all agree upon. So I take the information and I try to break it down and then build it back up in a logical way.
Right.
So it's a step-by-step building of logic to get to understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you saw that. That's how I do the 5 elements. That's how I do the channel interactions. It's step by step.
Yeah.
Now with the ICHING, the reason it took me a little bit longer to be able to break it down this way, not because it's more complex, but because there's less information about it. That's one thing. It's something that we don't really talk about in our TCM schools, or it's starting to come in a little bit more.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that it's so based in mythology at the moment. When people think of the I Ching, they think of this oracle book.
Yeah, I was thinking there when you were talking, I actually have these oracle cards.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm learning. I mean, this wasn't a big emphasis for me other than in the martial arts, and you were pretty much taught very basic level. There was no hidden concepts in there. I have several different translation versions of the I Ching, which I just like to read. They're just beautiful, almost like poetry. But when I look at it myself, it's like programming. It's like binary.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of see it. These series of zeros and
well,
one.
it is. It's the original oldest form of binary mathematics we found.
Yeah.
When they were coming up with computer programming in the 1920s, and they came up and they were starting to look at the binary codes, there was a mathematician who had seen the I Ching. He said, hold on, everything is already here, right? It's a binary system.
Yeah.
So one of the things is that the I Ching has many different uses. We can use it to understand the channels and channel interactions. The UAT system is based on the I Ching. Okay, even though I use it at a lower level, I only use the first 2 levels. I don't use the Bagua for the UAT system. Here we go to the next step, which is using the Bagua, because we're looking at the changes of yin and yang, as opposed to the structures of the body.
Right.
But then, as I said, it's also an oracle. You have the oracle cards. Personally, when I use the I Ching in a different function than for acupuncture. I use it more, not so much as the oracle of telling me what's going to happen, but I use it to understand psychological processes that are happening within myself or the person I'm working with.
Yeah.
And, I think we've done one or two work readings between us where it's not so much about this is what's going to happen. It's these are the tools you need to approach what you're working on now. So, the I Ching it's a wonderful book for many things. And we've ignored it in Chinese medicine for a very long time.
Yeah.
Not ignored it, but we haven't studied, it hasn't been part of our general knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's a lot of books you can buy in acupuncture and you don't see the I Ching in it at all, in any way whatsoever. And that's quite sad, I think. And I do agree, like I'm famous for doing my dragon cards, but I say to the clients that I work with is, this is not the future. This is just reaffirming your current subconscious or conscious or state. It's just speaking back to you. And it's that idea of that quantum interaction, that interaction has already happened.
Exactly.
There's no future, there's no past. It's already
it's the
organized.
Spotlight on where you can look at where you might not, where the shadows might be hidden.
Yeah. So as a practitioner myself for many years, how would this next level or this approach, this module of how is it going to benefit me on, say, the Monday morning or Tuesday morning when I go into the clinic?
So the practical applications of what we look at the weekend of the ICHING Bagua level 1 is we come up with 12 different channel patterns with specific points. Now, these can treat many internal problems. We can use them for psycho-emotional problems. We can use them for external attacks of pathogens. We can also use them for complex patterns of 2 or more whole channels being affected. So on Monday morning, you walk into the clinic, you will have more ability to treat the complex cases that you're seeing. And the other thing that it gives is it gives you the ability to start to frame treatments. And let me explain what I mean by that is, when we talk about, I'm going to use the analogy or the image of Western alchemy for this. Also, it's true with Chinese inner alchemy, is that the first step of inner alchemy is to create the vessel, is to support the vessel in which you are going to make all the transformations. This I Ching approach is about creating that vessel. It's about reinforcing the vessel and choosing which is the vessel the body needs help with creating, which will then facilitate all the other changes that are happening. There's a saying is if the vessel isn't solid, it will, or the vessel leaks, the change can't happen.
Very good. So, yeah, you're engineering acupuncture effectively for human wellness. That's great. Actually, that makes me think about that project, the book that I was talking to you, and then the other material is to be able to create that 8-step Neigong and find out what the engineering is there. Because even though it's 8 steps, it's probably interacting with a lot of other channels. So that I would be interested to work with you on that at some point. But I'm looking forward. There's actually people already enrolled, even though we haven't really pushed it. So after this, what I'm going to do is leave a link to the Jade website for booking your slot. It's very easy to do. There's not a whole lot of questions. You book it in. It'll give details on how to make payment. We would like to see those people who are continuing their training with you. We'd also like to see new people who perhaps have gone down this route before, looked at maybe the Bagua I Ching, maybe looked at meridian conversions, a little struggling with it, not understanding how and why it works. or maybe those people who've done like the Magic 12 and want to understand why, say, Magic 12 or Magic 8 would work, how it works, why it works, rather than just being told it works. And it's really interesting. You talked about, you know, in the Qigong, that we actually did Qigong this morning, and we were working with some elements and sensing. So it was sometimes with Qigong, it's sensing, knowing where the issue is, rather than trying to clear the problem, rather than trying to like remove the issues. It's building an awareness so that eventually you can remove that tension. Do you know what I mean? So it's understanding where the problem is hidden for you then to progress. And I think there's a lot of my students, they go, God, this is horrible. It's really hard work, and I feel worse. And it's like, good, you know, because it will change. It will change. So we're looking forward to seeing. We've already got a crew, a UAT crew there, a good solid crew. And we want to see people come from all around Ireland. We will try to position it in Central Ireland, either Kildare, Meath, somewhere where everybody can get to. If the numbers are bigger, then we'll change the venue to it. But this is going to be crucial. We're at a point now where we have to take acupuncture beyond where it's been. And this is the only way we're going to do it, by understanding fundamentally why it works. Because when you understand why it works, it doesn't matter what system you actually do, you understand why that system works. And that's so, so important. In the Qigongs that I teach, is I say to a lot of the students, just work with the movements, and then they're not really sure why we're doing it. And then they have an insight and go, oh, I can now feel it. And now they understand. Now they understand why it works. What we're trying to do is give you the framework first, so that when you come to needle, you have that extra intention behind it, because you now know this is going to speak to this in this way. So it's kind of a different way of looking at things to what I've learned. But bring it on. Let's get it done. If there's enough interest, then later on in the year, we're hoping, is it September, we'll go back to the beginning.
Exactly.
So people can, when they go back to the beginning, that reframes the 5 elements and it reframes the I Ching, and it just strengthens that understanding. Exactly. And I even have students that are coming that are undergraduates. Yeah. So, and they're saying, this is brilliant. This is brilliant because it's adding layers. It's adding layers.
And, you know, I teach this in undergraduates in Switzerland. It's part of the courses in the school I work at. And when I get students who are in their second, third years of acupuncture college, they're like, now I understand what I had to memorize before. And as a practitioner, it's now I understand what I was doing before, right? It's giving that knowledge of why, as not so much there's the how. Of course, we look at the how, but we're also answering why. And that's what brings us deep into understanding the healing process and how we're interacting with our patients, with ourselves, with the universe, etc.
Okay. Anything else you want to say to people here in Ireland?
One thing I would maybe say is that also don't worry if you haven't done the previous courses that I taught in Ireland. This course is still accessible and available. I build the courses that whether you've done the other courses or not, you can always get enough information out of each course that you'll be happy and you'll go away with practical things. And the other thing is, if you have done similar courses, you know, I'm not the only person who teaches about the ICHING Bagua and channel conversions and meridian conversions. The feedback I get is this is still helpful. This still brings more depth and understanding and uses. So yeah, it's an invitation for anybody, whether you're a seasoned balanced practitioner or a complete novice to anything that's with channel interactions. The course will work for both of them. Absolutely. And everything in between.
You know, I'm sure there's a few favorite films that you have in your library that you can watch over and over again. I know there's a lot of films where you watch them and you don't want to see it again, but there are definitely certain films that I like to watch. You know, The Great Escape as an example,
The
Papillon, as
Sting.
an example. I like to watch these films, but I always see something new each time because I'm seeing it in a different space, time. Maybe it's sitting in a different chair, looking at it at a different angle. So I want people to realize that it's good to revisit this. It's good to go back and look at it through a different lens, through the UAT lens, through the Jonathan Shubs approach, because I find you can go for a whole weekend and then you get 1 or 2 or 3 aha moments, and it's been worth it just for that.
Yeah.
No, and you're reinforcing. Like, there's a lot of my friends who are martial artists, and they say you get to black belt. Black belt is just the beginning. It's not, you've now reached the pinnacle of your martial career. You are now ready to study. And so we want people to be ready to study. This is where we're bringing them to. They can study. And the beauty of what I find with your thing is when I go home, I can continue my studies because now I have an understanding. Right. Small intestine 5, large intestine 5 does this, and it works this, and it works that way, and it interacts. So that's the beauty of it, you know. And plus, you have a whole library of stuff online. You have a backup. We have a WhatsApp group in Ireland that support one another. It's all there for the taking. So please do join us for this module. Will be 30th of April, 1st of May. Details will be left below. If you're still unsure, contact myself, or you can reach out to Jonathan. And looking forward to seeing you there. And thanks very much for joining me today, Jonathan. And
my pleasure. And thanks for
the rest
having me.
of your weekend in hiking or whatever you're going to be doing. Thanks very much.